interesting explanation of all the facets of transformation that's necessary for social adoption in the workplace. What I'd like to do now for you here is take a deep dive in one company, and that's Atos. And the reason why I think it will be useful is because it is such an intense example of adoption of social. And I think that there are just 3 things to focus on in our adoption. And please take any lessons you might want for yours. The first is, of course, top-down management of change. In fact, what we'll call leadership from the top. I was going to call the other one leadership from the bottom, but I prefer the term grassroots. So leadership from the top, leadership from grassroots. And then lastly, I want to talk about what I think is key. And that's leadership from the middle. Because it's the middle management layer in corporations that determine whether social adoption lives or dies. They're the link points. They're the nexus within an organization. So I'm going to take you through simple screenshots that demonstrate specific examples of social adoption, and feel free to interrupt, ask questions as necessary. So first of all, leadership from the top. Every program needs to start somewhere. And our program, the Atos Zero Email program, started in the most public way possible. When your chief executive announces on CNN in front of millions of viewers that an organization, that your organization is going to get rid of email, that catches the world's attention. What's really interesting about the psychology of announcing externally that you're going to do something internally is it doesn't give you anywhere to go if you're an employee of that company. You have to respond. And I have to tell you that 3 years ago, I was just sitting in the audience when this was announced, and you can imagine the consternation. You can imagine the sense of, well, how are we going to do this? Now, I have a very strong inside track that Thierry Breton knew exactly what we were going to do. We were going to transform our organization through the adoption of social software. But at that time, I was just a manager sitting in the room, listening and wondering what we were going to do. So first of all, the first facet of leading from the top is establish your vision. Set your goal. Even if that goal might seem unrealistic, set that goal because you will concentrate the mind of your organization. And it's from that announcement that we had the impetus of the scientific community selecting social software as the main driver for that change. And you had the response actually from the employees, particularly the young employees, saying, yes, thank goodness, this is how we operate in the real world. Thank goodness someone's thought about bringing social into the workplace. But it's not everything. There are other things. Once you get started, so let's say you've put everything in place, and I've no doubt that you will find most of those things in place within Atos. So you've thought about your adoption, you've assigned your communities, you've created your change agents, you've put in your community managers, you've got those community managers in place to curate and create the lighthouse communities that are going to signal adoption. Well, if you're leading from the top, then actually as a leader you need to participate. Now, I come from the UK, and in the UK our chief executive actually happens to be German, Ursula Morgenstern, but she gets this, and she gets this really, really well. So there she is. That's her 2014 message to staff. And of course, what's the scary thing for a leader? Previously, you announce things and you never get any response. This isn't Ursula doing anything other than writing in her own words, and she gets responses to her own posts, and suddenly she's in touch with her workforce without any filter. But of course, what the workforce see, and by the way, it's not just Ursula, it's every manager within her management group, is they see a leader participating in social, responding, listening. There is nowhere to go if you're a manager and you do not want to participate in social collaboration because your boss's boss, or your boss's boss's boss is collaborating regularly with her employees. And so can you. So, leadership from the top is setting an example. Here's another example. This is closer to home. This is here in France, Jean-Marie Simon and Jean-Michel Estrade. So the Chief Executive Officer of Atos in France and the head of HR for Atos in France. And Atos conducted a Great Place to Work survey. The view of Jean-Michel was that he wanted to explain the survey to his employees. One of the examples we just saw was a jam. So he declared that he would set aside 1 hour for employees to ask whatever question they wanted of him related to being a great place to work. And so as a response to this, there were 53 responses, 53 questions in the space of an hour. That's just under 1 a minute. And tremendous, intense interaction. Now, not only does that give the chief executive of France the opportunity to dispel myths, to spread good messages, to shape how he wants management to come across and the messages he wants employees to respond to, but what's he doing viscerally in front of everybody is he's collaborating. He's getting feedback on a problem. He's getting feedback on an idea. He's getting direct input, unfiltered by the layers of management. And you know what? Management are okay with it. How could they not be? So a third example of how you can lead from the top is rewarding success. It's one thing to have a lighthouse community. But isn't it great if your lighthouse community is treated in exactly the same way, with exactly the same emphasis and exactly the same reward as your top salespeople are recognized when they sell the company's biggest deals? So Thierry Breton has a champions group, of course, amongst his sales team. The best salespeople come and meet him and discuss their deals and share ideas, and it's a great reward. Very often they'll come here to Paris, or they might go to another location. Thierry Breton is saying, right, what is just as important as sales to me is the success of my communities, the success of collaboration within my organization. So the leading community managers within Atos are invited, and in fact this happened just 2 weeks ago, to have lunch with Thierry Breton and to discuss what it means to collaborate. And that means that there's a direct feedback loop to leadership. And it also means that there is an equivalence, the moral equivalence between leading a community and selling. Now that is rare in my view, but it's important because all of those communities support fundamentally the operations of the business, the sales of the business, the well-being of our employees, and most importantly, our promises that we make to our customers. So top down. Now, many of us will have been part of the grassroots, and it's often the most rewarding place to be. So I think we must listen to the employees of our business, wherever they come from. And I want to give some examples of grassroots activism that, again, might resonate. Self-actualization. Well, let's say the recognition doesn't come from above. How can we be proud of ourselves? How can we generate a sense of belonging if we're the activists? So, very early on, the Wellbeing at Work Council, who were the young employees who came up with the idea of zero email, began to express great pride. And with the idea of zero email, created the concept of a zero hero. What does it mean to be a zero hero? So here, these are employees who've taken a pledge to eliminate email from their lives. They've taken a pledge to ensure that if at all possible, they adopt social collaboration, that they will be the moderators of their communities. They will assist other employees in learning how to collaborate, in finding purposeful adoption, in infecting each other with the bug of social collaboration. So there's a zero hero movement, but self-actualized. This didn't come from management. It didn't even come actually from the leadership of the Zero Email program. It came from the grassroots. Great example because it's self-perpetuating and gives people a great sense of belonging. Normalizing the change. So the next few screenshots are simply where we have collated all the great internal case studies. And of course this is led by our communications department because they realize the value of sharing amongst employees. And there you go, there's François-Régis d'Anselme, who's been with the program from the start. And he is absolutely passionate about sharing the journey. And of course, the journey is sometimes more important than the destination. It's often more fun than the destination. So here, a simple collaboration space to share our stories and share our collateral. Now, some of that collateral is in the form of persona videos. I can show you some of them actually. If I now escape and go to the internet, you'll see on the Atos YouTube page the persona videos. And what's great about these persona videos, the previous speaker in here was talking about making them relevant. Well, Atos is an IT services company, so it's very important to make it relevant, not just in terms of generic social collaboration, but if you're winning new business, what does it mean to be a bid manager? What does it mean to be, we're an IT services organization, an engineer? What does it mean to manage projects? What does it mean to deliver services? And these are humorous, fun, but absolutely critical examples of archetype roles that are right for Atos. Now, in your organizations, there will be archetype roles that are right for you. So, the opposite of preaching. What does an example of great management look like? And of course, we turn the volume up on the humor. And of course, these are impossible archetypes in the one sense, but always with a glint in their eye, always with a sense of humor. And that engages, that gives people a sense of that they are part of something bigger and that we've thought about them. We've thought about their business purpose. So moving on. Let's acknowledge the pain. The journey isn't easy or intuitive for many people, and particularly if this isn't a natural environment, if social collaboration isn't a natural environment. People have all sorts of personalities. Some are extroverts, some are introverts, some like to share, some don't know how to share. In our organization, it's 42 countries. English is the business language. But sometimes the confidence of a non-native English speaker to communicate might inhibit their ability to participate. So in this same space, we have videos. And these aren't necessarily videos from the top, but there are one or two. But these are videos of individuals who you can identify with, just telling their personal story. What's happened today? Have they been able to make a breakthrough? Where are they? Are they at zero? Have they relapsed? Have they gone through and tried and been overwhelmed? And this again creates rapport, but it also creates buy-in, because people feel that they are amongst normal people. And one of the things I've had to learn, and I started off leading this program, is changing my language from being an evangelist. And when I stood on this stage a year ago, I was very much in evangelist mode. And realizing that evangelism connects to a point, but it probably connects to that 10% point. It doesn't get you the additional 90%. So it's about being real. And of course, then there are tools and techniques of how to work smarter. And of course, here with the tool that Atos have chosen, there are of course techniques. When you're learning a new tool, there are ways to optimize that and get that to work for you. So that's an essential component of the grassroots. So we've talked about leadership from the top. We've talked about grassroots. And I'll always talk about why I wear a suit and tie. Because we work in corporations. And in corporations, it's the middle management. It's the middle-aged middle management. It's often the middle-aged, very conventional middle management that are your resistors. Why? Why? It's obvious. We're the age that grew up with email. We're the age that actually, if we become middle management, to some degree have become successful. So how do we capture the middle management? How does someone from the middle management play a role in leading change? Well, here's an example. This is an example from the UK, and it's hot off the press. I was notified by Eddie, who's the chief, who's the project director for one of Atos's major accounts in the UK. Atos runs the back office IT for roughly 70% of the public sector organisations in the UK. And this is an account that I used to work in a while back. And he was so proud with the work that Andrew Long, who's the PMO, had done in building the home office internal space. This is just for the project team for Atos. But he was so proud that he wanted to show management what he'd done. And really they'd listened to the training and the techniques and had created a space that was purposeful. So this middle manager, in fact he's a reasonably senior manager, connected. Why? Because social collaboration in his account was helping him get the job done. And in that account there are lots of projects. And so this is an example of a project director, a senior project director, realizing that he can control and manage his projects much better because he has all the employees, all the participants, all the actors of those projects working together. So here's a great example. Now, how many people here are from the IT function? Great. Okay, but the IT function can get a bad rap a lot of the time. And it's often very unfair for the IT function to get that rap because they operate within budgetary constraints. They have to deal with legacy infrastructures. Every organization is different. The promise of new technology is always greater than the reality on the ground. So Marc Aswed here in France, Marc Mostaf in the UK are two examples of chief information officers who have decided to use social collaboration to connect their constituents, connect their customers, their clients with each other. Who are their clients? The employees. And what they discovered is that they could use social media to identify patterns in the organization. One example from the UK is that Mark was able to identify that there were a class of employees who had out-of-date laptops. And they were good corporate citizens because they didn't want to upgrade those laptops, mindful of cost control. But in reality, they were able to explain the pain of operating with obsolete kit. And Mark was able to say, well, that's fantastic. Please, anyone else with that problem, come to me, and was able to immediately arrange a product refresh for a tranche of the organization that he might never have known about without this example. He was able to identify parts of a very large estate with slow-running networks, and was able to fix point networks which were able to improve the life of employees, and gauge what was necessary at any point in time. So this is actually, believe it or not, and this might be of interest, it's one of the most popular spaces. It's open to all UK employees. In France, it's open to all French employees. And it gives that platform for investment. And of course, that investment can now be justified much more easily. And of course, in an organization, you don't necessarily need the largest IT department because employees can help each other out. Examples being, we are moving to a single messaging and communication system, and different groups migrate at different times. So when it comes to your turn to move, if you have a frequently asked question, you can check through your search in the space whether that question's been asked before. And it dramatically reduces the pain of change. Leadership from the middle. Okay. So we've covered social project management, we've covered social help desk. And by the way, that social help desk example doesn't just operate within Atos. Atos operate it across all their clients. Two examples would be where the SAP function, servicing SAP clients, have been able to shorten problem-solving times, documented from 3 days down to 45 minutes. So that's a fairly good example. We also have another UK example, National Savings and Investments, where the team are able to, again, identify and solve customer problems much more easily and get recognition from the end customer that they're able to make step improvements in service. So the last example of leadership from the middle. At what point do you become able to contribute ideas to your organization? Well, actually at any point. And so if you can harness the ideas of the organization, you can produce better products, you can make better strategic decisions, and you can begin to make step changes in your operational performance, introduce managers to the art of what's possible. So the scientific community have done this right from the start. Anyone here from an educational institution? So you'll be familiar with the idea of peer review. And what the scientific community do is they use the rating features to make sure that no publication reaches the public unless it's been moderated by a great proportion of the community, and unless it's achieved at least a 3-star rating out of 5 from that majority, which is actually a very tough standard given that you have experts within that community. But of course the expertise, or the expert isn't isolated. The expert is able to draw upon the wisdom of the crowd. And this doesn't have to be something where you bring all your experts together. Your employees are actually experts collectively in most of the things you do. If you're able to lead from the middle, it means that your employees at every level can contribute. It doesn't matter, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to have an idea, and then that idea can be moderated through the weight of the crowd that participates. The last slide I'll leave you with is the point of scale. Now, this is just my view. So within common communities that I belong to, I have access to 56,000 of the 74,000 Atos employees. And the remainder of those employees are in parts of the organization that I don't have access to. That's a tremendous weight of people if I want to find an expertise, if I want to ask a question, for example, on our water cooler. And thousands of communities, which means that there are hundreds and hundreds of project communities, hundreds and hundreds of social help desks, hundreds of ideas communities, communication communities, management communities. Every possible part of the organization is covered and is connected to the core purpose of the organization. So it's through this weight of adoption, with top-down management showing leadership and example, the grassroots responding, and the middle management engaged on their core business topics, that I believe this is a great example of how social adoption can work. It's an ongoing experiment, but I'm very happy to share those short ideas with you today. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone who want to ask a question?
Hi, we just heard that just 1% of the population is writing on those blogs and things. How do you get those testimonials? Do you have journalists going around and collecting interviews and so on? How do you make people publish and testify about what they're doing?
Well, often people are very proud of what they're doing and want to share. And in any group of people, you'll have those people who want to tell their story, who are maybe on the extrovert end, who want to help. So we found that it's a combination of ambassadors, the people who voluntarily taken upon themselves, I guess, the zero hero community, who are asked by the program to give their own testimonies, and people who are naturally loquacious, people who naturally like to share. The top-down encouragement's important. The fact that top managers recognize the communities, that they publish the stories, they're able to explain them, also gives a sense of recognition and reward. And this isn't simply gamification. This isn't simply the kind of rewards that you'd get if you just get your corporal stripes for posting a certain amount of times. This is real business benefit. These are groups that have saved the organization money. These are groups that have achieved breakthroughs in sales, in product development, in marketing, in well-being. And when that recognition is genuine, when it's heartfelt, then you develop a sense of reciprocity. People are encouraged positively to explain what they've done, and management are very happy to encourage that because they see and they know and they see in the bottom line the benefit of that example. So, but it has to be a supportive environment, and that means that you have managers who'll tell their story as much as you'll have employees at the bottom line telling their story as well.
One other question, if I may. Do you have still an internal communication department?
Yes, very much so. In fact, one of the important agents of change has to be communications. One of the shifts for them has been moving from a largely email-dominated communication environment to a social environment. And of course, the first thing that happened when they moved was they started getting comments on the announcements. They started getting feedback. That's something that they debated. They wanted to be prepared for. And they needed to effectively have an internal PR approach rather than just a communication approach. So they moved quite late in the program. And when they moved learning from early communications. I'll give you one simple example. The finance director in one of the countries issued an announcement. It was a year-end announcement that people should submit their timesheets early so that we could close the books. And it was misunderstood by an employee who didn't understand why he should submit his timesheet early and was concerned about the accuracy. The CFO was able to respond directly to explain that this was an audited procedure and that though the timesheets were submitted early, they were always reconciled with the actual timesheets at the end of the year, but that closing your books early is a very important indicator of financial health, and therefore it was an important process backed up by our external auditors. So he was able to correct a misunderstanding, but in a public way that reinforced the credibility of his position. So some of those early experiences informed the ability of the communications function to understand the difference between broadcast and conversation.
I had one question, simple question. What about 2 years after the first announcement of Mr. Thierry Breton
Yes.
of Zero Email? Where are you today?
Well, the communication will no doubt be happening at the appropriate point from the organisation. What we've seen is the most extraordinary change, and there are two ways that you can track it. You can track the drop down of email, and you can track the increased adoption of social software. Both of those I no longer represent the Zero Email program, but both of those are showing trends in the right direction. There are very significant changes in very important populations. There are variations that are bounded by, sometimes by country, by operational unit. The lessons I've discussed today, the inference that we have today, is that those countries and areas with the most, with the strongest top-down engagement are actually the ones that have achieved the biggest response. So there's a very important part that leadership has to play in that adoption. But I'm not at liberty today to give you the exact figures, but I will say, if you watch the communications after the Olympics that will come from Atos, Atos will be explaining for themselves the actual impact of the Zero Email program. What I think I am at liberty to say is that the drive will continue. It will be a perpetual program, because this is something that we've kicked off, that Atos have kicked off, that they perceive has tremendous value. It's what I'd call a societal change. And you don't stop societal changes at an artificial point, let's say a 2 or 3 year point. You keep them going. And we very much have the impetus to keep this program going indefinitely.
Thank you. Just one question about measurement. How important is measurement, you think, for the success? And how do you do it? And how is it inside of the company important for the success to show measurement, to show that it works?
Well, there's an answer I would have given you at the start of the program, and there's an answer I'll give you now. At the start of the program, as a program manager, program director, my view was that it had equal importance to adoption, to getting the right tools in place. Measurement was critical. What I encountered in my naivety was that there's a tapestry of laws across Europe, and Atos is 70% based in Europe, so it's a very important geography. That means that what I can do in Holland, what I can do in the Netherlands, who are all for gamification and measurement and league tables and measuring, is actually illegal in Germany. So, and in fact, the German influence in Atos is very strong, because in many ways it's an alliance between the legacy Atos Origin and Siemens Information Systems, which is very dominated in Germany and Eastern Europe. So we found that we've had to learn through our education with the workers' councils that actually the most important thing is to connect not on empirical measurement, how many emails are you sending, how many posts are you posting, but it's actually more important to engage on business purpose. The workers' councils, I believe, support this because they understand how our projects can be run more effectively, how our accounts can benefit from social help desks, how ideas can appear from the organization that might previously have been ignored. And those override anything empirical.
What I found most interesting about your talk was when you were mentioning the fact that many people in the middle management grew up with email and they were very successful with what they did before. Then you were talking about all the stuff you can show people what they can do even better. But my perception is, from the experience I made, that many people in the middle management don't feel any pain they want to be solved by social tools or any social collaboration, because they say, I don't see the problem. They say, I'm very successful with what I do, and then you say, okay, you can have your employees more engaged and your team members, and they say, well, my team is very engaged. You can say, we have ideation blocks, and people will come up with new ideas, and then he says, well, my team is very innovative. We bring up the most innovative products in the industry, and so on and so on, and they say, we have good customer relationships, we have good relations with our partners, and as you can see from my numbers, I am very successful. So my question is, how do you deal with these people who really feel no pain and see no reason to change their behavior? Because people are reluctant to change behavior unless it really hurts.
Yeah. There's always a carrot and stick argument. And at the time that I was involved very clearly in the campaign, my emphasis was almost purely on the carrot. Now, the change methodology that we have, and I haven't talked about the change methodology, focuses on the idea that your change agents, the ones that are either experiencing pain and want to overcome that pain, or really get this, probably like most people in this room, are really passionate about the benefits of social software. That those are the people that you need to, that will drag everyone through. It will be your leaders that will eventually bring through the laggards. And if we're talking about a generational change, that might take a long period of time. We may need to adjust our time perceptions. There were two interventions that were deployed at Atos at a management level. And I wouldn't say that they introduced pain, but they certainly would have concentrated the minds of management on how to achieve an extra reward. The first was to put all the senior management, the top 700 managers of Atos, and this was eventually rolled out to the top 3,000 managers of Atos, through a training program called Leadership in the Zero Email Company. What it introduced them to was the benefits of collaboration, but also made them realize that they were at some point either very comfortable, as you were saying, no need to change. They may have been on the complacent end of comfort. They may have been in denial that the change was going to happen, and boy, is this change happening. So they needed to realize that this management vision was going to be seen through, and they couldn't ignore it. They needed to be shocked out of that complacency and aware of their own denial so that they could deal with it. They needed to be comfortable with the idea of chaos and confusion. It's very difficult to perhaps switch from an email environment to a social collaboration environment. So acknowledging that pain, as you saw with the testimonies in the videos, is something that we wanted to say it's okay to go through pain. In fact, if your team see you go through a bit of pain, that actually will help you, because you might find they can help you with it. And then, of course, the people that would lead that change intervention were the people like us in this room the early adopters, the passionate ones, the ones that got it, often the younger employees. But there was a management scorecard objective to require those managers to attend the training and for their teams to attend the training. And then later on, management incentives to be active managers of their communities. So each manager in Atos is required to lead a community. And we see no contradiction in that requirement because those communities are designed to be purposeful. They're designed to support their community. And of course, we have very good metrics about what a healthy community looks like, with the right interaction, with the right levels of contributions, with the right mix of views and rights and reads. So you can control it, but I would always emphasize that you're giving a reward rather than a punishment. And in fact, the punishment becomes not being rewarded through seeing the benefits around you and through the attention that successful communities get.
I'm sorry, but we're running late, and in fact, we want to have the time to have a real panel. I just wanted to ask a single question to both of you, and also to Lee Bryant and Fabien de Geuzer, who had to be panelists with you. From what I've seen, you took the leadership angle, but I would have called that maybe side effect of a whole change program. The question I would want to ask to every of you is transformation for you. Is it better to go from one program to another, to one sample project to another, to gather on the side effects, or to draw a whole path of transformation?